The bright spring sunshine poured through the big windows of Maple Creek High, making the hallway feel warm and stuffy. The squeak of sneakers on polished floor, the slam of lockers, and the loud chatter of everyone trying to get to class filled the air. Right in the middle of the main hallway, next to the door of the gym, a single piece of bright blue poster board was taped to the wall. At the top, in big, bubbly letters, it said, **** Spring Showcase Sign-Ups, **** underneath, in smaller print, **** Show Your Talent. All acts welcome, ***. The poster looked a little lonely and forgotten, fluttering a bit whenever someone rushed past. A boy from the soccer team, his backpack slung over one shoulder, stopped and squinted at it. He nudged his friend. "You doing the showcase this year? Gonna sing that song that makes Miss Henderson cry?" His friend laughed. "Nah, man. I'm saving my voice for more important things, like yelling at the TV when we lose." They moved on. A group of freshman girls hovered nearby, whispering and giggling. One of them, a girl with braces and very long hair, took the pen hanging from a string and carefully wrote, **duet. A million dreams from the greatest showman, **. She bit her lip, looking proud and terrified at the same time. The list was slowly filling up. It was the same sort of stuff every year. There was * original poem, My Soul is a River, *. There was * guitar medley, classic rock favorites, *. Someone had bravely written * interpretive dance, The Journey of a Leaf, *. It was a nice list. A safe list. Everyone knew what to expect. You'd get some good singers, a few cringe-worthy moments, and a lot of proud parents clapping no matter what. The talent show committee, led by a very organized and energetic senior who everyone knew was going to run a company someday, would occasionally check the list. They'd nod, satisfied. It was shaping up to be a perfectly fine, perfectly normal spring showcase. One Tuesday, right after the final bell, the hallway was a river of students flooding towards freedom. In the middle of that river, moving against the current like a calm, slow fish, was a girl. She was a senior, known to most people, but not really * known *. If you had to describe her, you'd say she was quiet, nice, smart, the kind of girl who always had her homework done, whose hand was up in AP Physics with the right answer, who spent her lunch period not in the noisy cafeteria, but in the quiet corner of the library, a thick book on biochemistry or European history open in front of her. Her name was Eliza Chen. She wore jeans, simple sneakers, and a soft, gray sweater. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat, no-nonsense ponytail. She carried her books in a worn leather satchel, not a backpack. As the crowd thinned, she stopped in front of the blue poster. She didn't look at it with excitement or nerves. She just looked at it, her head tilted slightly, as if it was a difficult equation written on the board. Her expression was unreadable. She stood there for a full minute, just watching the paper. Her best friend, a lively girl with a constant sparkle in her eye, came bouncing up. Maya was the opposite of Eliza in almost every way. Where Eliza was quiet, Maya was loud. Where Eliza was still, Maya was always in motion. "There you are," Maya said, hooking her arm through Eliza's. "I was looking for you. We're going to get bubble tea. You need to stop thinking about whatever you're thinking about and live a little." Eliza just nodded towards the poster. "Are you signing up?" Maya snorted. "For that, my only talent is eating an entire large pizza by myself. That's not really stage-worthy, unless they want a demonstration." "Why? Are you thinking of signing up?" A small, almost invisible smile touched Eliza's lips. "Maybe." Maya's eyes went wide. "What for what? What's your talent? Can you solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded? Because I would actually pay to see that." Eliza shook her head. She reached for the pen dangling from the string. Her hand was steady, in neat, precise handwriting, completely unlike the bubbly or sloppy writing above and below. She wrote her name, **** Eliza Chen, ***. Then, in the column next to it, under talent, she wrote just one word, ***, piano, ***. She put the pen back. Maya stared at the paper, then at her friend's face, looking for a sign that this was a joke. "Piano?" Maya whispered, as if it was a secret word. "Eliza, since when do you play piano?" "A long time ago," Eliza said softly. Her voice was so quiet Maya had to lean in to hear it over the hallway noise. "I don't really anymore. Not seriously, but you're signing up for the * showcase *," Maya said, the confusion clear in her voice. "That's like a performance. In front of people. With the lights." "I know what it is," Eliza said, that small smile returning. "So, What are you gonna play? Something cool, like the theme from that scary movie? Or, oh, that sad song from the cartoon. Everyone loves that one. Eliza just shrugged. I haven't decided yet. Probably something simple. Maya's face softened. She squeezed Eliza's arm. Hey, that's awesome. It'll be great. I'll be your front row cheerleader. I'll bring pom-poms. She started leading Eliza down the hall. I bet you're really good at the simple stuff. Like chopsticks. You know chopsticks has more than 2 notes, right? You have to move your fingers and everything. Eliza let out a real laugh then. A light, soft sound. I think I can manage that part. The news traveled fast in the small ecosystem of the school. By the next day, a few people had noticed the new name on the list. The boy from the soccer team saw it when he was walking by. Eliza Chen, piano? Huh, okay. The committee president saw it during her morning check. She tapped her clipboard thoughtfully. Eliza Chen. Good student, quiet, piano. That's a nice, classy addition. Probably something by Mozart. That'll be good for the parents. In the library at lunch, Maya was holding court with a few other friends. She's being all mysterious about it, Maya said, slurping her iced coffee. But it's Eliza. It's gonna be fine. It'll be sweet. She'll play something pretty. We'll all clap. And then we'll go get tacos. One of their friends, a guy who was in band, asked, what's she playing? Does she take lessons? Maya shrugged. She said she used to, a long time ago. She said it'll be something simple. The band guy nodded knowingly. Oh, okay. Probably like a beginner's sonatina or something. Cool. That became the accepted truth. Eliza Chen, the brainiac, was going to do something nice and simple on the piano. It was a pleasant surprise. It was a safe bet. No one expected anything more. Why would they? She was the girl with the perfect grades, not the girl with the perfect pitch. Eliza, for her part, went about her days as usual. She went to class. She studied in the library. She walked home alone, her satchel heavy with books. But if you watched her very closely, you might have seen a change. Sometimes, in the empty hallway after school, her fingers would move silently against the fabric of her jeans, tapping out a complex, silent rhythm. Sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, her eyes would drift to the closed door of the music room, a distant look in them. One afternoon, a week after she'd signed up, she didn't go straight to the library. She walked to the auditorium. The big room was dark and cool and smelled like dust and old wood. The stage was empty except for the old upright piano. Its dark wood scuffed and scratched. She walked down the aisle, her footsteps echoing. She climbed the steps to the stage. She stood in front of the piano for a long time, just looking at it. Then, very slowly, she lifted the fallboard, revealing the yellowed keys. She didn't sit down. She just reached out one finger and pressed down on a single key, somewhere in the middle. The note hung in the quiet, dusty air. It was a little out of tune, a little flat, with a soft thunk of the old felt hammer. It wasn't a beautiful sound, not really. But when Eliza heard it, she closed her eyes. And for just a second, the quiet, studious girl was gone, replaced by someone else entirely. Someone with a storm in her chest and a song in her hands. She lowered the fallboard gently. The note faded into silence. She turned and walked off the stage, back into the bright, noisy world of high school, where she was just Eliza Chen, the girl who was going to play something simple on the piano. No one saw her. No one knew. The old piano kept it secret, and so did she. The week before the spring showcase buzzed with a low, steady hum of excitement. It was a nice kind of nervous energy that filled the hallways between classes. You could hear snippets of conversation everywhere. Did you get your costume yet? I'm so scared I'm gonna forget the words. My mom is making my whole family come. It's so embarrassing. Eliza moved through it all like a ghost. The chatter seemed to flow round her. She was a quiet island in the middle of the river of pre-show jitters. Her friend, Maya, on the other hand, was diving headfirst into the excitement. Okay, so I was thinking, Maya said one lunchtime, leaning across the library table. For your big debut, what are you wearing? You can't just wear your school clothes. This is a performance. You need, like, a dress or something. Something that says piano star. Eliza looked up from her history textbook. It says piano star? You know what I mean. Something nice. I have this black dress you could borrow. It's simple, but it's pretty, sure, Eliza said, her voice easy. That sounds fine, fine, just fine. Maya laughed. You are the most calm person about this. I'd be throwing up by now. What are you playing, anyway? Have you decided? Eliza's eyes drifted back to her book. Almost. Just picking between a couple of things. Are they hard? The pieces. Some parts are trickier than others, Eliza admitted, which wasn't really an answer. Maya took it as confirmation of her theory. See, it'll be great. A little tricky, but beautiful. It's gonna be lovely. That was the word everyone used when they thought of Eliza's upcoming performance. Asterisk lovely asterisk. It was a safe, warm, fuzzy word. It didn't mean exciting or breathtaking. It meant nice, pleasant, something you'd enjoy and then forget. The talent show committee held a mandatory meeting for all performers after school on Wednesday. They all gathered in the auditorium that took girls doing the duet, huddled together whispering, the poet looking pale and serious, the guitarist tuning his instrument quietly in the corner. Eliza sat near the back, her satchel on her lap. The committee president stood on the stage, her voice echoing in the big, empty room. Okay, everyone. Order of performances. We're going to mix it up, keep the energy flowing. We'll start with the dance piece, then the first guitar act, then the duet. She went down the list. Eliza Chen, piano, you'll be 7th. Right after the comedy skit and before the senior choir's small ensemble. That's a good spot. Eliza just nodded. 7th, a good spot. Right in the comfortable middle. Nothing to open the show, nothing to close it. Just a nice moment in the middle of the evening. The president continued. Now, a few rules. Each act has a strict 5-minute limit. We have to keep the show moving for the grandparents, you know? A few people chuckled. The piano is the one on stage. It's a little old, but it's tuned. We had someone coming last week, so no worries there. Eliza's head lifted slightly at that. A tuned piano? Good. And remember, the president said, smiling warmly, this is about having fun and sharing your talent. No pressure. The audience is your friends and family. They're on your side. Everyone clapped a little. The meeting broke up, and people started to drift into little groups, talking about their acts. The poet came over to Eliza, looking anxious. You're playing piano, right? The poet asked. That's so brave. I just have to read my words. I don't think I could make music with my hands. My hands would shake too much. Eliza offered a small, reassuring smile. I'm sure your poem will be wonderful, thanks. Hey, is your piece, like, really sad? Or is it happy? Eliza thought for a second. It's both. It has different parts. Oh, cool. Like a story. Yeah, Eliza said softly. Like a story. The night of the showcase arrived. The spring air outside was cool and sweet, but inside the school, the atmosphere was warm and electric. The parking lot was full. The hallway outside the auditorium was packed with people, students in nicer clothes than usual, parents holding phone cameras, little brothers and sisters getting told to sit still. Backstage was a world of its own. It was cramped and dark, lit only by a single bare bulb and the slivers of light coming from the edges of the heavy curtain. It smelled like dust, old wood, and nervous sweat. The performers were all there, a jumble of costumes and last-minute panic. The two duet girls were doing vocal warm-ups in a corner. Me dash me dash me dash me dash ma dash ma dash ma dash ma dash mo dash mo dash mo dash mo dot double quotes. The interpretive dancer was already in her green leotard, stretching her limbs slowly, her face a mask of deep concentration. The comedian was pacing back and forth, muttering his lines under his breath. Eliza stood off to the side, near a tall, rolled-up backdrop. She was wearing the simple black dress Maya had lent her. It fit her well, but she looked a little uncomfortable in it, like she wasn't used to wearing dresses. She kept smoothing the fabric down. Maya popped her head backstage, her face glowing. The place is packed. I saved a whole row for us right near the front. Oh my gosh, you look amazing. She gave Eliza a quick, tight hug. You nervous? A little, Eliza said. It was true, but her nervousness didn't look like the comedian's pacing or the singer's deep breaths. It was a quiet, still kind of nervous. A focus. Just play your lovely piece and you'll be great, Maya said, squeezing her hand. I gotta go find my seat. Break a leg. And then she was gone. The show started. The sounds from the stage filtered back the polite, welcoming applause from the audience. The first notes of the opening dance music, the muffled voice of the MC. You could feel the rhythm of the night building from behind the curtain. Laughter for the comedy skit, respectful silence for the poem, followed by sincere applause. The loud, enthusiastic clapping for the duet, whose families were clearly in the crowd. Eliza watched it all from the shadows. She didn't talk to anyone. She just watched and listened, her hands resting at her sides. Every so often, the fingers of her right hand would flex, then curl, then relax. She thought about the piano out there, the old, scuffed upright. She thought about the feel of the keys under her fingers. She thought about the sound it would make, now that it was tuned. It wouldn't be a perfect sound. It would have its own character, its own slightly rough voice. That was okay. Sometimes, old instruments held the music better. The stage manager, a student with a headset, gave her a thumbs up. "You're after this guitar piece. You're on deck." Eliza nodded. She could hear the guitarist finishing his medley. He ended with a big strumming finale, and the crowd clapped loudly. The comedian who had gone earlier slapped the guitarist on the back as he came off stage, breathless and smiling. "Killed it, man." The stage manager pointed to Eliza. "Okay, you're up. Piano's center stage. Take your time." Eliza took a slow, deep breath. The air backstage tasted like dust. She walked to the edge of the heavy, velvet curtain. From the crack, she could see a sliver of the audience. Rows and rows of dim faces, the light from the stage reflecting in their eyes. She saw Maya in the third row, grinning and waving at someone. She saw her own parents, sitting a few rows back. Her mom had her phone ready on her lap. Her dad was leaning forward, his face a picture of supportive expectation. The MC, a popular senior with a bright voice, walked to the microphone. "Wow, wasn't that fantastic? What a talent. Up next, we have a performance I think we're all curious about. Please give a warm welcome to our next performer. She's one of our top scholars, and tonight she's going to share a different side of herself with us. Let's hear it for Eliza Chen." On the piano, the applause was warm and kind. It was the sound of an audience being polite, being supportive. It was the sound people make when they expect something simple, something lovely. Eliza closed her eyes for one last second. All the sounds faded: the rustling of the crowd, the whisper of the curtain, the beating of her own heart. In that silence, she wasn't the quiet girl in the library. She wasn't the dutiful daughter. She wasn't the student. She was just the music, waiting to be let out. She opened her eyes, stepped through the curtain, and walked into the bright, blinding light of the stage. The stage lights were a physical weight, hot and bright, pressing down on her. They turned the audience into a dark, shapeless sea, their faces lost in the gloom beyond the edge of the stage. All Eliza could see was a blur of color and the occasional glint of an eye. The sound of the applause faded into a soft, expectant murmur, and then into a silence that felt thick and heavy. She walked across the wooden stage, her footsteps the only sound. The old upright piano sat there like a patient animal. It looked smaller under the lights, more humble. She reached it and placed a hand lightly on its top, the wood warm from the glare. For a second, she just stood there, her back to the crowd, looking at the instrument. In the audience, people shifted in their seats. A little kid whispered, "Is she gonna play?" and was gently hushed. Maya, in the third row, leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Asterisk, just get started, asterisk, she thought, sending the message out with all her might. Asterisk, it'll be fine once you start. Asterisk. Eliza pulled out the piano bench. It made a soft scraping sound that echoed in the quiet. She sat down. She smoothed the black fabric of her dress over her knees. She adjusted the bench just an inch forward, then an inch back. Her movements were slow, deliberate. It wasn't really nervous fidgeting. It was more like a ritual, like she was preparing a space. She lifted the fallboard, revealing the row of black and white keys. They looked very clean under the lights. She placed her hands in her lap, fingers loosely curled. She didn't put them on the keys. Not yet. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. In the darkness, someone coughed. A program rustled. The silence was becoming uncomfortable. The kind, supportive feeling in the room began to thin, replaced by a prickling of confusion. Was she okay? Had she forgotten? The committee president, watching from the side, felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach. Asterisk, please, just play a note. Asterisk, she thought. Eliza closed her eyes. She took one last, deep breath that filled her lungs completely. When she opened her eyes, they were different. The quiet, uncertain look was gone. It was replaced by a sharp, deep focus, a kind of calm intensity. Her spine straightened. Her shoulders, which had been slightly hunched, dropped and squared. She lifted her hands from her lap. They didn't shake. They moved with a calm, certain grace and hovered over the keys. Then, she began. The first sound was not a melody. It was a chord, a deep, rich, complicated cluster of notes from her left hand that seemed to vibrate right through the floorboards. It wasn't loud, but it was asterisk full asterisk. It was a sound that had weight and shadow. It hung in the air for a moment, dark and beautiful and sad. The audience, as one, stopped breathing. Before that sound could fade, her right hand came down, not with tinkling, simple notes, but with a cascade, a waterfall of sound that was both delicate and powerful, racing down the keyboard and then swirling back up. It was intricate. It was impossible. It was the sound of 100 thoughts happening at once. This was not chopsticks. This was not a sonatina. This was not something lovely and simple. This was a storm. Maya's mouth fell open. Her grip on her own hands tightened until her knuckles turned white. She stared at her friend's back. The girl on the stage was a stranger. Her body was moving with the music, not with big, dramatic sweeps, but with a powerful, controlled energy. Her shoulders shifted with the force of her arms. Her head tilted, listening to the echoes in the old piano. The guitarist, who was standing in the wings, froze. He knew music. He knew what hard sounded like. What he was hearing was not just hard. It was another language. His eyes went wide. No way, he whispered to himself. Eliza's parents sat completely still. Her mother's phone, which had been ready to record a sweet little tune, was forgotten in her hand, pointing at the floor. Her father's supportive smile had melted away, replaced by an expression of pure, stunned wonder. He looked at his wife, but she was just staring at their daughter, tears already starting to well in her eyes. They had bought her a small keyboard years ago. They had paid for lessons for a few years, until the schoolwork got too heavy and she said she wanted to stop. They had never, not once, heard this. The music unfolded. It wasn't just one thing. It was a story without words. There were moments of such soft, heartbreaking tenderness that people in the audience felt a physical ache in their chests. Gentle, questioning notes that seemed to hang in the air like a sigh. Then, without warning, the music would twist. It would grow restless. The notes would become sharper, faster, a tumble of anxiety and searching. Eliza's fingers were a blur. They leaped and crossed and danced over the keys with a precision that seemed inhuman. But the truly astonishing thing was not just the speed, it was the feeling. Every note, from the loudest bang to the softest whisper, was filled with something: longing, anger, hope, a deep, old sadness. A boy in the back row, who had only come because his friend was in the comedy skit, slowly sat up straight. He stopped looking at his phone. The light from the screen died on his face as he watched, completely drawn in. The old piano teacher, Mr. Davies, was sitting near the back. He had come to support the school. He knew the piece immediately. Chopin's Ballade, one of the hardest, most emotionally complex pieces ever written for piano, a piece professionals struggled with. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hand over his mouth. He wasn't watching her technique, though it was flawless. He was listening to the story she was telling. He heard the years of practice in that empty house when no one was listening. He heard the frustration of putting it all away for textbooks. He heard the joy of finally letting it out. A single tear traced a path down his wrinkled cheek. On stage, Eliza was gone. The girl named Eliza was gone. There was only the music. It poured out of her, through her fingers, into the old piano, and out into the dark room. The world had shrunk to the circle of light, the feel of the keys, and the story she was weaving from sound. The piece built. It built and built. The quiet parts became more tense. The loud parts became more furious. It was like watching a wave gather itself, higher and higher, out at sea. You could feel it coming. The audience was rigid, caught in the grip of it. No one coughed. No one rustled a program. They were holding on. And then it broke. The final minute of the piece was a whirlwind, a torrent, a fury of notes so fast they blurred together into a roar of sound. Eliza's whole body was involved now, driving the music out of the piano. It was powerful, it was desperate, it was glorious. It was the sound of something breaking free. And then, with a final, crashing chord that shook the floor, it stopped. The last note rang in the sudden, shocking silence. Eliza's hands fell from the keys into her lap. Her head bowed forward. Her shoulders rose and fell with deep, shaky breaths. The stage lights felt hot on the back of her neck. In the audience, no one moved. The silence was total. It was deeper than the silence before she started. It was a silence of pure shock, of breath being stolen, of a spell that hadn't yet broken. They had expected a basic tune. What they had gotten was a piece of her soul, and no one in that room would ever forget it. The silence after the final chord was so complete it felt like a new sound. It was a heavy, thick blanket thrown over the entire auditorium. For 3 full seconds, no one made a noise. They were all stuck in the world the music had built, unable to find their way out. In the third row, Maya was staring. Her brain was a jumble of broken thoughts. Asterisk, that was Eliza? My Eliza, that wasn't a piano piece. That was a war, a beautiful war. She never said. She never even hinted. Asterisk, she looked at the bowed head of her friend on stage, the simple black dress, and tried to connect it to the storm that had just happened. She couldn't. It was impossible. A man in the middle of the audience, a father of one of the dancers, let out a long, slow breath he didn't know he'd been holding. It wasn't a loud sound, but in the quiet, it was like a trigger. One person, somewhere in the dark, began to clap. It was a single, hesitant clap. Then another joined it, and then, as if a dam had broken, the entire auditorium erupted. This wasn't the polite, kind applause from before. This was a roaring, surging, standing wave of sound. People jumped to their feet. They weren't just clapping. They were shouting, whistling, stomping their feet on the old wooden floor. The noise was physical, a wall of awe and gratitude that hit the stage. Eliza flinched, just a little, as the sound reached her. It was like waking up from a deep, deep dream. She slowly lifted her head. She blinked in the bright lights, looking out at the dark, roaring shapes. For a second, she looked confused, as if she didn't know where she was or why all this noise was happening. Then, very slowly, she turned on the bench to face the audience. She saw the sea of people, all standing, their hands moving in a blur. She saw her parents. Her mom was openly crying, one hand over her mouth, the other clutching her dad's arm. Her dad was clapping so hard his hands must have hurt, his face split by a huge, disbelieving grin. A shy, fragile smile touched Eliza's lips. It was a smile of relief, of exhaustion, of something else, to a kind of quiet triumph. She stood up, her legs feeling a little shaky under her. She took one small, awkward step forward and gave a short, simple bow from her waist. It wasn't a performer's bow. It was the bow of a person who was saying thank you, and also, asterisk, I'm sorry if that was too much. Asterisk. The applause didn't stop. It thundered on. The MC, waiting in the wings, was wiping her own eyes, completely forgetting she was supposed to go on and announce the next act. Backstage was chaos and silence. The performers weren't talking. They were just looking at each other with wide eyes, shaking their heads. The comedian who had told jokes earlier just kept saying, "Wow, wow, wow." The guitarist walked to the edge of the wing and peeked out. He watched the audience going wild. He looked at Eliza's small figure taking another shy bow. He turned back to the others. That, he said, his voice hushed with respect, was not high school. That was professional. That was real. Eliza finally walked off the stage, the applause still crashing behind her like waves. The moment she stepped into the dimness of the wings, the stage manager, a tough senior who played linebacker, was there. He didn't say anything. He just held out a fist. Eliza, looking surprised, bumped it softly with her own, and then she was surrounded. The other performers didn't swarm her with loud questions. They approached her slowly, carefully, as if she might be fragile, or as if she was someone important they didn't know how to talk to. The poet was the first. Her eyes were red. "That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard," she said, her voice trembling. "You said it was a story. I felt the whole story." The girl who had done the interpretive dance just reached out and touched Eliza's arm. "Thank you," she whispered, and then walked away, too full of emotion to say more. Maya finally burst through the backstage door, pushing past a rolled-up curtain. She didn't hug Eliza right away. She stopped in front of her, looking her up and down as if seeing her for the first time. "Who are you?" Maya asked, but her voice was full of love and wonder, not accusation. Eliza's shy smile returned. "It's just me, just you? Asterisk, just you?" Asterisk. Maya laughed, a wet, choked sound. "Eliza, that was. I don't even have words. Why didn't you tell me? All those years. I've known you since we were 10. You talked about your old piano teacher once, and you said you quit because it was boring." Eliza looked down at her hands, which were still trembling slightly. "It wasn't boring. It was everything. But when I started high school, it felt like too much. Like I had to choose. Be the student or be this. And being the student was safer, easier to explain." "Where did you even play?" Maya asked, thinking of Eliza's quiet house, her neat room filled with books, not sheet music. "The basement," Eliza said softly. "We have an old piano in the basement. My parents got it tuned for me every year. Even after I said I stopped, I think they hoped I'd go down there after homework, sometimes for hours. It was my secret, my other world. Back in the audience, the noise was finally dying down. The MC had gotten herself together and was announcing the next act, but the feeling in the room had changed forever. People were buzzing, whispering to each other, "You see that? I had no idea. That girl is in my chemistry class. She's so quiet." Her parents finally made their way out of the row and into the hallway, needing air. Her mom was still dabbing her eyes with a tissue. All those times she was in the basement, she said to her husband, her voice thick, "We thought she was just, I don't know, tinkering, listening to music." She told us she didn't play anymore. Her dad put his arm around her. "We heard her sometimes, remember? Through the floor. Those little bits of music. We thought it was just her messing around, not building asterisk that asterisk dot double quotes in the hallway. The old piano teacher, Mr. Davies, found them. He had taught at the school for 30 years before retiring. He knew every musical student who had come through. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," he said, his voice gentle. They turned. "I'm the former music teacher. I just had to. I had to tell you what your daughter did in there. That was a gift. A real, serious gift. That piece, the way she played it, that's years of the most disciplined practice. And more than that, it's heart. You can't teach that." Eliza's mom started crying again. "We didn't know," she repeated, like a confession. Davies smiled kindly. "Sometimes, the deepest rivers run the quietest." She kept that safe, and tonight, she decided to share it. "You should be so proud. The whole school is." Backstage, the show had to go on. The senior choir ensemble was singing, their voices sweet and harmonious. But everyone backstage was still living in the echo of the piano. Eliza had changed into her normal jeans and sweater, her secret self packed away again. But she was different. She stood taller. The quiet around her was no longer the quiet of shyness, but of a person who was finally, completely, at peace. As the final acts performed, people kept glancing at her. The questions were starting to form. Asterisk, how long have you played? Asterisk, asterisk, why didn't you join the band? Asterisk, asterisk, could you play for our wedding? Asterisk, asterisk, are you going to be a musician? Asterisk. Eliza knew they were coming. But for now, in the dim, dusty backstage, with the sound of the choir floating in, she just listened. She listened to the last traces of her own music mixing with the new sounds. She had told her story. She had put it out into the world. And for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel like she was hiding a part of herself. She felt whole. She caught Maya's eye across the room. Maya grinned and gave her 2 thumbs up. Eliza smiled back. A real, full, easy smile. The performance was over. But for her, something had just begun. The final curtain closed on the spring showcase. The bright stage lights snapped off, leaving the performers blinking in the sudden, ordinary dimness of backstage. The usual post-show chaos began. Hugs, congratulations, the search for dropped water bottles and forgotten shoes. But the air felt charged, different. Everyone's eyes, whether they meant to or not, kept drifting to one corner of the room. Eliza stood by the heavy velvet curtain, her satchel back over her shoulder, looking like herself again. But she wasn't just herself anymore. She was the girl from the piano, the quiet center of the gentle storm that had swept through the auditorium. Her friend Maya was her shield, standing close, fending off the first wave of people with a protective, proud energy. Give her a minute, guys, she just basically ran a marathon with her fingers. People laughed, but they still looked at Eliza with a new kind of respect. It wasn't the respect they had for the star athlete or the class president. This was deeper, mixed with a little bit of awe. How do you talk to someone who can do asterisk that asterisk? The crowd in the hallway outside the auditorium was thick and noisy, parents waiting to collect their performers. When Eliza stepped out, with Maya leading the way, a strange thing happened. The buzz of conversation didn't stop, but it changed. It dropped to a murmur, and a path seemed to clear for her slightly. People smiled, not the polite smiles from before the show, but real, warm, impressed smiles. A few reached out to gently touch her arm. "Amazing," someone said. "Just incredible," said another. They didn't need to say her name. She knew they were talking to her. Then she saw her parents. They were standing a little apart from the main crowd, waiting. Her mom's eyes were still puffy, but she was beaming. Her dad had his hands in his pockets, looking at his daughter with an expression she had never seen before, a pure, uncomplicated wonder. When she reached them, there was a moment of quiet. "What do you say after a secret that big has been revealed?" Her mom spoke first. She didn't say "well done" or "we're proud." She simply opened her arms and said, in a voice thick with emotion, "My brilliant girl." Eliza stepped into the hug, and for a second, the noise of the hallway faded away. It was the embrace she'd gotten after winning the science fair, after getting her college acceptance letter. But this time it felt different. This time, it was for a part of her they were meeting for the very first time. Her dad put a big hand on her head, messing up her hair just like he did when she was little. "The basement, huh?" he said, his voice rough. "All that time, we thought you were down there building a robot or something." "I was," Eliza said, her voice muffled against her mom's shoulder. "Just a different kind." The ride home was quiet, but it was a good quiet. The kind filled with things that don't need to be said right away. Eliza stared out the car window at the dark streets, the streetlights washing over her face in yellow waves. Her hands, resting in her lap, still felt the ghost of the keys, the memory of the vibrations. She was tired, a deep-down tired that comes from using every piece of yourself. But it was a clean tired, a happy tired. The next day at school was strange. Word had traveled, of course. It had zoomed through texts and social media before the curtain had even fully closed. Asterisk, did you see Eliza Chen? Asterisk, asterisk, no. Did you hear Eliza Chen? Asterisk, in the hallway before first period. People didn't just nod at her. They stopped her. A shy freshman boy from her calculus class approached, his face red. "That was the coolest thing I've ever seen," he mumbled, and then hurried away before she could reply. The committee president found her at her locker. "You totally saved the show," she said, businesslike but sincere. "The energy after you played, it was electric. We should have had you close." Her teachers had a special glint in their eyes. Her stern history teacher paused while handing back essays. "Ms. Chen," he said, tapping her paper, which had an A on top. "A formidable performance last night. It seems you have a talent for powerful narratives." He almost smiled. The biggest change, though, wasn't in others. It was in Eliza herself. She walked through the same halls, but she felt lighter. A wall she didn't even know she had been building inside herself was gone. She had carried this huge, beautiful, heavy secret for so long, treating it like a guilty habit. Now it was out. It was real. And people hadn't laughed or been confused. They had been moved. At lunch, instead of the library, she let Maya drag her to the cafeteria. They sat at their usual table. But it felt different. A few people from the showcase came over: the poet, the guitarist. They didn't talk about the performance directly. They just talked about the scary part of being on stage, about how the microphone squeaked, about the party one of the seniors was having on the weekend. Eliza listened, and sometimes she laughed. It was an easier laugh than before. A few days later, she was stopped after school by the retired piano teacher, Mr. Davies. He had been waiting for her by the front doors. "Got a minute?" he asked, his kind eyes crinkling. They walked to the now empty auditorium and sat in the front row, looking at the silent stage. The old piano was still there. "I won't keep you," he said. "I just wanted to say thank you for letting us hear that, and to ask, what's next?" Eliza looked at her hands. "I don't know. College is in the fall. Pre-med." Mr. Davies nodded slowly. "A noble path. A good path. The world needs doctors." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The world also needs art, needs that kind of truth. What you have isn't just skill, Eliza, it's a voice. You can have both, you know. The books and the music, they don't cancel each other out. Sometimes, they make each other stronger." He didn't push. He just sat with her in the quiet. Then he handed her a small, folded piece of paper. "An old colleague of mine teaches at the university you're attending. She runs a small, advanced music program. Non-majors can audition, just in case you ever want to. Keep the door open." He stood up, gave the stage one last, fond look, and left her there. Eliza unfolded the paper. There was a name and an email address. She held it, feeling its weight. It wasn't a demand. It was an option, a key. The spring showcase became a legend at Maple Creek High. For years after, students would say, "You should have been here the year that quiet girl played the piano and blew the roof off." But for Eliza, the real meaning of that night wasn't about becoming a legend. It was about becoming whole. That night, she went down to the basement again. The old family piano sat in the corner, lit by a single lamp. Before, this had been her secret hideout, a place of escape. Now, it felt different. It felt like a workshop, a place of practice, not hiding. She sat down. She didn't play the stormy ballade. She played something soft, a gentle, flowing piece by Debussy. It sounded different now. It wasn't a secret whispered to the walls. It was music, played by a girl who no longer had to choose between who she was and what she loved. Upstairs, her parents were cleaning up after dinner. They heard the music floating up through the floorboards. They stopped and listened. They didn't exchange a look of surprise anymore. They just smiled. It was no longer a mystery. It was simply their daughter, playing the piano. And that was the most unforgettable part of all.